A 100,000-ton warship longer than 3 football fields has finally returned to the water after being silent for years. And this moment is far more important than it looks because the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced, expensive, and technologically ambitious aircraft carrier ever built by the United States, has emerged from a grueling 15-month repair operation inside one of the world's largest dry docks, sending a clear message to both allies and adversaries that America is determined to keep absolute control of the world's oceans, and this $13 billion floating fortress is not just another ship coming back online. It is the foundation of the Navy's future dominance, a symbol of American engineering ambition, and a critical asset the United States simply could not afford to lose, because when the Ford was forced into emergency repairs early in its operational life, it exposed the hidden risks of revolutionary technology while also proving how seriously the Navy takes reliability, safety, and long-term power projection, as thousands of engineers, shipyard workers, and sailors worked around the clock to fix a propulsion failure that could have crippled the carrier fleet for years if left unaddressed. A failure so serious that Navy leadership made the difficult but necessary decision to halt operations and repair the ship properly rather than risk catastrophic consequences at sea. And to understand why this decision mattered so much, you have to understand what the USS Gerald R. Ford really represents, because this carrier is not just bigger than its predecessors, it is fundamentally different, producing nearly 3 times more electrical power than older Nimitz-class carriers, allowing it to operate electromagnetic aircraft launch systems instead of outdated steam catapults, launch aircraft more smoothly and with greater precision, reduce stress on pilots and airframes, and dramatically increase sortie generation to as many as 270 launches per day, a 33% increase that can decide the outcome of a real conflict by enabling more strike missions, more reconnaissance flights, and more air superiority patrols in less time, while at the same time requiring roughly 600 fewer sailors thanks to advanced automation, which reduces long-term costs and logistical strain while improving efficiency across every department on the ship. But with such cutting-edge technology comes inevitable challenges, and those challenges surfaced dramatically during post-delivery sea trials in early 2018 when alarms began sounding deep inside the ship's engineering spaces as one of the main thrust bearings failed, a massive component responsible for transferring power from the ship's nuclear reactors to its propeller shafts. And this was not a minor issue that could be ignored or patched temporarily, because a damaged thrust bearing threatens the entire propulsion system, and if left unchecked, it could lead to catastrophic failure, loss of maneuverability, or even long-term damage to the ship's nuclear powertrain, forcing the Ford to reduce power immediately and carefully return to port while engineers rushed to diagnose the problem. Investigations later revealing that machining errors during manufacturing had weakened the bearing, errors traced back to production flaws that simply could not withstand the immense heat, pressure, and rotational forces generated by a nuclear-powered supercarrier. And once that reality became clear, the Navy had no option but to place the Ford into dry dock for one of the most complex maintenance and repair operations ever attempted, even though doing so would remove a desperately needed carrier from an already stretched fleet at a time when U.S. naval forces were actively deployed in the Mediterranean, the Persian Gulf, and the Western Pacific. Yet leadership understood that fixing the problem correctly now was far better than gambling with failure during combat operations, because moving a 100,000-ton carrier into dry dock is itself a feat of engineering precision that borders on unbelievable, requiring multiple powerful tugboats to maneuver the ship into exact alignment measured in inches, massive wooden and steel support blocks positioned at carefully calculated points along the hull to distribute weight evenly, and the slow draining of more than 100 million gallons of water while engineers monitored every movement, vibration, and stress indicator to ensure the ship settled perfectly onto its supports without warping or structural damage that could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And once the dock was fully drained, teams of specialists finally gained access to normally unreachable components like the propeller shafts, rudders, and underwater hull sections, allowing them to remove the defective thrust bearing, install a precisely engineered replacement, and perform alignment checks with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, because even the smallest misalignment could lead to premature wear or another failure. While other teams took advantage of the downtime to conduct hull inspections, service underwater systems, upgrade components, and improve reliability wherever possible, knowing that every additional task completed now would reduce future maintenance demands. And after 15 months of relentless work, the moment finally arrived to bring the Ford back to the water. But even this process, known as rolling out, required extreme caution as massive pumps slowly flooded the dry dock over several days, allowing the carrier to lift evenly from its supports while engineers watched for any uneven movement that could introduce dangerous structural stress. Before the enormous caisson sealing the dock was removed and tugboats once again took control, guiding the carrier at a pace measured not in miles per hour but in feet per minute, because something this massive does not forgive mistakes. And watching a ship of this size float at all almost defies logic, yet there it was, emerging slowly and deliberately, ready for the next phase. Because floating again does not mean combat ready. And what followed was an exhaustive testing and certification process designed to push every system to its limits, starting with propulsion tests at various power levels to ensure the new thrust bearing could handle full operational loads without overheating or excessive vibration, followed by fast cruise exercises where the crew operated the ship as if it were at sea while still tied to the pier, testing communications, damage control, combat systems, and emergency procedures in a controlled environment, then progressing to full sea trials where the Ford ran at flank speed, executed sharp turns, stopped, and restarted repeatedly, and demonstrated that its propulsion system could perform flawlessly under real-world stress. While at the same time, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system underwent extensive deadload testing using weighted sleds to simulate aircraft launches, proving it could operate reliably and repeatedly. And the advanced arresting gear was tested to safely stop aircraft weighing up to 50,000 pounds within just a few hundred feet, forces so extreme that failure is not an option, because pilots' lives depend on flawless performance every single time. And beyond aviation systems, the Ford's radar, weapons, and communication systems were tested under conditions simulating electronic warfare, jamming attempts, and coordinated fleet operations, ensuring the ship could detect threats, defend itself, coordinate with escorts, and project power even in hostile environments, all while the crew trained continuously, learning the ship's unique systems, refining procedures, and building the cohesion required to operate one of the most complex machines ever built, because a carrier is only as effective as the people who run it. And the successful repair and return of the USS Gerald R. Ford carries enormous strategic importance at a time when aircraft carriers remain the most powerful symbols of American military reach, capable of influencing events across entire regions without relying on foreign bases, deterring adversaries simply through presence, and reassuring allies who know that when a U.S. carrier is nearby, American support is real and immediate, especially as China rapidly expands its navy and asserts claims across the Indo-Pacific. Russia challenges Western interests in multiple theaters, Iran threatens vital shipping lanes, and North Korea continues to test the limits of global security, making carrier presence more critical than ever. And the Ford's advanced capabilities give it advantages no other navy can currently match, from higher sortie rates to reduced crew requirements and improved long-term efficiency, while also serving as a testbed for technologies that will define future carriers, ensuring that every lesson learned from its early challenges makes the next ships cheaper, more reliable, and more capable, because the first ship in any new class always bears the burden of innovation, and critics often focus on the staggering $13 billion price tag. But what that investment buys is a mobile air base that can remain on station for months, operate independently, respond rapidly to crises, and project power across thousands of miles, a level of flexibility no other military asset can provide. And behind all this technology and strategy are the human beings who made it possible, the shipyard. Workers who logged more than 800,000 man-hours repairing the thrust bearing alone, working in confined spaces with extreme precision, knowing their craftsmanship directly impacts national security. The sailors who continued training and maintaining readiness even while their ships sat in dry dock, and the Navy leaders who made hard choices to fix problems the right way rather than the fast way, demonstrating that while new technology brings challenges, the United States has the industrial capacity, technical expertise, and determination to overcome them. And as the USS Gerald R. Ford prepares for deployment once again, it carries more than aircraft and sailors. It carries a message to the world that America remains committed to maintaining naval superiority, protecting its interests, supporting its allies, and promoting stability through strength. And if you found this deep dive valuable, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more in-depth military stories, and stay with us, because the USS Gerald R. Ford is back, and that is very bad news for America's enemies.